Today we're talking about underrated commanders that people underestimate and then get demolished by.
I'm Mia, and I like the fact that Keanu was released as Shadow.
I'm BZ. I'm going to go see it with her. We're the Nitpicking Nerds, sponsored by Card Kingdom. You know, Sonic 3 doesn't come out for a while, so you probably have some disposable income until you see the movie 10 times. We're not sponsored by Sonic 3, but we are sponsored by Card Kingdom. Please go to Card Kingdom instead to spend your money during the time that Sonic 3 is not in theaters.
Card Kingdom is amazing. They have sealed product. They have singles, free shipping on single orders 50 or more. And they just have accessories too, so go check them out. Use our link and tell them we sent you. It helps the channel a lot. We're also sponsored by Dragon Shield, best sleeves in the multiverse. If you use the code
NERDS
at checkout, you can save 5% of your entire order on just anything you're going to order. That is custom sleeves, normal sleeves, whatever. There are even deck boxes there. Real my tax dollars saved.
That was like when the artist is on stage and they like don't sing, one of their lyrics and they hold it out to the audience. But like the lowest version of that.
You just went.
Someone at home's like, good sleeves. And I'm like, yeah. So we are also sponsored by Moxfield. You're going to hear from them in the middle of the video or maybe at the end or maybe right now. We're going to keep you guessing. And check out our Patreon to get your decks audited by us and see other content that's not on YouTube that you can't see anywhere else through Patreon. It's kind of like a whole nother channel because we're making stuff monthly with content creators playing games and with ourselves doing late night podcasts. It's pretty fun.
Your decks could be better. They could be better if we take a look at them. And you could do that by just signing up at the 4-4 Angel tier or above. Now, we also have playmats for sale soon, and we're very excited to unveil them.
Amber as Queen Meowchessa.
Miso as Displacer Kitten, and these are going to be available on Whatnot, and I don't know if you can see, but they are also signed by the cats.
They have their little paw prints on them. We're so proud of these. We took a long time to get it right, get things perfect, and we want to do a Whatnot merch drop Thursday, May 2nd at 8 p.m.
Yes.
It's going to be so much fun. I want you to at least come hang out with us. We're going to sell them. We're going to auction a few off at the end. If we sell out, we're going to give away a plateau.
We're really excited. This is our first merch drop, so come hang out with us. We really appreciate all of the support.
Yeah, bookmark it in the description. I definitely wanted to get that out there because this is going to be great. We're super happy. So we got to get into these underrated commanders. Appreciate you sticking with us, fans of the channel. These are all commanders that if you don't respect them, you're really going to get rocked by them. They kind of maybe are unassuming at first, or part of them isn't as scary as other parts of them, and I think they just have potential to just bowl you over and annihilate you.
These commanders usually fly under the radar. They have abilities that while are powerful in the long term or later in the game, they might not be as immediate of a threat, and so you might be able to underestimate them. So the first one is Urza, Lord Protector. This is the meld one. 1 white and a blue for a 2/4. Artifact, instant, and sorcery spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. If you pay 7, which is a lot, if you both own and control Urza, Lord Protector, and an artifact called the Mightstone and Weakstone, you exile them, then meld them into Urza Planeswalker, and he's a big boy. Sorcery speed only. And you can activate each of these abilities twice each turn rather than only once. He starts at 7, which is understandable because of his big mana cost. His +2 is artifacts, instants, and sorceries you cast this turn cost 2 less to cast and you gain 2 life. You can +1 him to draw 2 cards and discard a card. 0, you create 2 1/1 soldier artifact creatures. And -3, exile target non-land permanent. And -10, artifacts and planeswalkers you control gain indestructible until end of turn and destroy all non-land permanents. That was a mouthful, and he does a bunch of stuff, just like a little bit of everything, but getting there to the Planeswalker side is a lot of work.
Yeah, so I didn't want to troll you or anything when I wrote out the Urza text, but the Planeswalker side doesn't matter to me. I think this is the part of Urza that people underestimate, and you go, what is the scariest part? It's like, oh man, if they meld it and then proliferate and then they ultimate, that's pretty good. It's like, no, actually, just the 3 mana 2/4 artifacts, instant sorceries cost 1 less. That's the silly part that will like annihilate you, and that's the part that I'm really scared of. One of the cards that you're going to see in these decks that is the most scary is Sensei's Divining Top. Reducing Sensei's Divining Top from 1 mana to 0 mana is very, very dangerous because this is a card that can put itself on top of the deck. So if you have ways to draw it, like let's throw the next card down, Mystic Forge, which lets you look at and cast artifacts on top of your library. Now you've got this 2.5 card, I would say, infinite combo where you just draw your entire deck, and Urza's sitting there in the command zone enabling that stuff.
And if you also have Aetherflex Reservoir, you can just zap people in the face left and right and just kill them with that life that you'll be gaining for casting Sensei's Top for free.
Yeah, the reduction of basically every spell by 1 is just silly. It doesn't do that thing where artifacts can't cost less than 1. If you can reduce 1 drops to 0, no problem. We also have Illustrious Wanderglyph. Just, you're going to see things like this as finishers if they can't get the Sensei's loops going, where they can just say, all right, I'll play these types of cards, pass the turn, and then all of a sudden I untap with a bunch of resources. And they all cost less mana.
Frantic Search is also a great one in here because you will actually gain mana from it because of the reduction. This can lead to some weird combos if you can copy it, for instance, or just get a lot of value in the long run.
Yeah, they just can play random cards. Like, you wouldn't think that this Urza deck is playing Frantic Search, but it's just a ritual in this deck that gives you like a Faithless Looting effect first. And then Urza loves himself. This is canonically fact and true in playing Magic. Urza, Lord High Artificer, also bomb in this deck. It just makes all your artifacts that you're casting for cheaper make mana, so then it's kind of like you have a 2 reduction on all your artifacts. And from there, I mean, you're just going to go off. But the thing I worry most about this Urza deck is that it's just going to combo me. Forget the meld thing. That's going to happen. That's a fun way to go. But I have yet to see too many Urza decks that can't even accidentally go infinite.
I definitely agree. It's just really powerful. And you just staple in mono blue Urza in here, as you were talking about earlier. That's just a powerful card as is. You can like lock down an entire board really easily with it.
Our next commander also has a secret hidden mode where it looks like it's trying to do one thing, but it actually just destroys you. It's Hazazon, Shaper of Sand, white, red, green for a 3/3 Desert Walk. Don't worry about that. You can play deserts from your graveyard, and whenever a desert enters the battlefield under your control, you get 2 1/1 tokens. This looks like a kooky deserts deck, and it's like you have to scrap together this janky mana base, and that's true. But this just plays out like an absolute, bomb lands deck, where it's just going to do all of the same lands things, put a bunch of million lands in play, and it actually just generates 2 1/1s every time. So it's kind of like, hear me out, your commander is like a Field of the Dead, and you're going to do all of the similar land sacking and land bringing back things.
It's funny that you mention that because Field of the Dead is actually on this list. I wonder who wrote this one. But Field of the Dead plus this, your board will get clogged in no time. Also, I'm just happy to see that deserts are having some actual hold in Commander now. With Yuma and the new deserts, which are also on this list that deal 1 damage to target opponent, you can get more of these triggers and just make your board even bigger.
Yeah, this is a deck that it just sort of gets going, and it takes advantage of the fact that lands aren't going to be interacted with as much. It's just going to put a bajillion of them out, like Scoot Swarm. This is just another kind of generic lands payoff, and it just goes right in this deck. So I'm not saying this deck is boring or lame. I just am saying it's stronger than it looks, because at first glance, if you haven't played against this, it looks like, oh, you're doing deserts, that's so cool, but it plays out very similarly. It's going to play Splendid Reclamation, put 30 lands in play, get a bunch of zombies, Scoot Swarms, and then the Sand Warriors, and it'll feel, I think, like a Lord Windgrace, like a powerful landfall deck.
I mean, what's better than playing 1 land per turn, but 2 with Exploration that comes down super early, and you can play 2 deserts per turn, pinging your opponents maybe, or just getting multiple landfall triggers, or just in general, maybe getting 2/2/2 zombies from Field of the Dead. But if we want to move on to pairs, what about an Abzan pairing? Frodo Adventurous Hobbit and Sam Loyal Attendant from the Precon are actually a very powerful pair. Frodo is a white-black for 1/3, and you partner with Sam. He has Vigilance, and when he attacks, if you gain 3 or more life this turn, Ring tempts you. Then, if he's your Ring Bearer and the Ring's tempted you 2 or more times this game, draw a card. And Sam is a 1 white-green 2/4, and you partner him with Frodo. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you create a food, and foods cost 1 less to activate. So this is a pretty interesting pair because foods will give you 3 life, and then Frodo will be able to have the Ring tempt you, and it just kind of feeds into itself. Plus, Abzan pairing, I really enjoy the fact that this doesn't have to do with the graveyard.
Yeah, this thing has surprised me every time I see it, and I think the surprise here is mostly Sam. Sam making a food every turn and then cutting the cost of sacrificing foods in half makes it so much more mana efficient and worth doing, and incentivizes you to do this, versus for 2, it's like, oh, I can crack 3 foods for 6 mana, but now you can crack 3 foods for 3 mana, and it triggers all your life gain stuff like the Gaffer, which checks each end step for if you've gained 3, and obviously making food twice as easy to crack means it's very reasonable to start to stack food up and then crack 1 every single turn, and now you're drawing way too many cards.
But how about everything from Lord of the Rings? Because we're also going to put Peregrine Took into here, because he's going to make an extra food token, so you're going to be having all of these food tokens. You're going to be able to crack them for so much life because of the reduction, and no one's going to be able to catch up with you.
Yeah, plus being able to just crack 3 of them, which is kind of steep for a card that ability that doesn't cost mana. That's going to be really annoying, because it basically is just like, no matter what, I'm going to use my foods. Even if you farewell me, I'm going to draw a bunch of cards, get my hand back stocked up, and now you've removed my board, but I'm just going to rebuild next turn.
There's also Samwise Gamgee, something that BZ uses to combo and CEDH, but basically non-token creatures ETB and gets you a food token, and you can sack 3 foods, and you can return a historic card from your graveyard to your hand. That's pretty spicy.
This deck weaponizes foods really well. You can throw in like Marauding Blight Priest and stuff to make sure that when you gain life, you drain them, or Sanguine Bond, obviously, that's that sort of thing. But with these kind of cards, like Peregrine Took and Samwise, you're just going to stack. It's really easy, and I've seen it every time with this deck. Every time they stack up 10, 15 food. And you're like, well, if I'm trying to chip you down and I haven't found my over-the-top win cons yet, I can't do that. This deck is very resilient. It will last into the late game. It's probably a classic second or first place deck just because it'll outlive 2 people.
Honestly, I'm really surprised that they brought so much like good power and just strength in the precons of Lord of the Rings, because I can imagine it would be kind of hard for them to reprint this, but there's just a lot of power in these like commanders and these just pieces. It makes the deck run together very efficiently.
Did you say hard to reprint? How about Nuka-Cola Vending Machine? Brand new. You can make a food with it, but whenever you sacrifice a food, you get a tapped treasure. So now it starts to feel like, oh man, wait, I have all these foods, and then I'm cracking them, I'm getting treasures every time, and then I can use the treasures to put back into making more foods. This feels like this engine that you have to stop. You have to get rid of these pieces somehow. I think Sam's one of the most important pieces, but Frodo's going to be beating you up the whole time, and eventually when you tempt enough times, he's going to make each opponent lose 3 when he hits.
It's not going to be that long until you actually get that lose 3 effect too. Also, doesn't Nuka-Cola Vending Machine go infinite?
It can go infinite with certain things. Peregrine Took is sort of like on that level of like, oh, you start to get these cards together and then you can go infinite. So now this deck has another route. Maybe you're playing Samwise and the Cauldron Familiar, but you can also play like Nuka-Cola, Peregrine, and there's like the Confectioner too. There's just all these cards that kind of just say too many things on them to not go infinite eventually, especially when you get like Academy Manufactor. Now, 1 food equals a food clue treasure, and I've talked about these payoffs of if you make a token, make another food. It's like, well, then make another food clue treasure, and then when you sacrifice foods, you get treasures, but you're actually getting food clue treasures, and your opponents will get bored. They're just going to quit.
I mean, I feel like Academy Manufactor is just a no-brainer at this point, because if you can keep making foods with it, you'll get a food and treasure, and if you have the reduction, you can keep cracking the foods to just gain life, and it could just get out of hand so quickly with that reduction.
And then when you have all the mana, you already have the clues. It does everything. It's like sustain and trigger your life gate stuff, make the mana to do all that, and crack all the clues to draw cards to fill your hand back up. Next up is a commander, because apparently on this script, I read all the simple ones, and you read all the ones that are 20,000 words.
Of course, why
Mine
else?
is Yargle and Multani, 3 black, black, green, 18/6. That's the whole block of text. It's just a big vanilla, and I think people criminally underrate and underestimate this card, and I think how you play against this card matters a lot. My new philosophy going into battle against Yargle and Multani is that this is a ridiculous commander when it does its thing. And I think people tend to let this deck do its thing because, oh, it can't be that bad. It's a janky card. Doing 18 of anything is way too many of those things. Whether you're drawing cards based on its power, gaining life, losing life, whatever, this is too much. And I think the way to play against Yargle and Multani is to never let them have it ever. And I'm sorry, Yargle and Multani players, but that's how it's got to be. Because you're either doing nothing with it or you are killing everyone, and there is no in between.
I mean, even though it's a vanilla, it still has a lot of power in it. This is a 1.5 kill, like punch kill for a commander damage. You could be drawing cards. You could be having everyone just like, you could gain life. There's a lot of things you could do. One of the cards in here that's great is Gitrog, Ravenous Ride. This is the new one. It has saddle, and if the creature saddles it, you can sacrifice the creature, and then you draw X cards, and then you put lands from your hand onto the battlefield, where X is like the power of the creature. So you're going to have Yargle and Multani saddle this, and then you're going to draw 18 cards. And it also has haste, I'm pretty sure, and trample.
So you can play Gitrog and then play Yargle and Multani next turn, saddle up. Sure, you lose it, you sacrifice it. You draw 18 cards, and then you put up to 18 lands onto the battlefield. If that sequence happens, I don't know how you ever beat this deck. And sometimes, people have the mindset of like, oh, let them do one thing like that. It's like, you just can't. There's no coming back for that. They're going to be able to rebuild and draw and cast Yargle Multani again, followed up by some backbreaking spell, because they literally have 25 lands in play on turn 6.
It's just really spicy. As BZ said earlier, 18 of anything is too much, especially in Commander, where the most things we do in a turn is like 4 or 5. So 18, That's crazy.
Disciple of Bolas. You sack Yargle Multani, draw 18, gain 18. You've now bolstered your life, so you're not going to get attacked by some random stuff and die, which gives you all the time to weaponize these cards. I think these decks probably want, like a Thought Vessel or something, so to have no max hand size, or maybe they go the opposite way and they say, I'm going to discard all my creatures and reanimate them or something like that. But when you build Yargle Multani, you got to figure, what am I going to do with those extra 11 cards?
Rich Car's expertise is going to get you there with an extra 18 cards drawn from it, and then you cast a spell 5 or less for free from your hand, which you definitely will have if you're drawing almost a fifth of your library.
Yeah, and this doesn't kill Yargle Multani like the other options, so you can play some kind of buff to make it well over 18 power and then just kill somebody with it, because this is basically a one-hit kill. You just have to giant growth it, and that's 21 commanders. So I'm so scared of this card, if you couldn't tell.
If you can give it trample, that's nasty. Double strike, it's just really dangerous because it comes down for, even though that's 6 mana, you do have a lot of green to work with, and the fact that it is your commander, you're on a shorter clock than most.
Sometimes there's things like Gerard Golgari Lichlord. It gets +1/+1 for each creature in your graveyard, but really you pay 3 and sacrifice another creature. Each opponent loses life equal to that creature's power. So if this Yargle Multani deck just wants to durdle, play Gerard early, then on turn 9, play Yargle Multani with the mana up, sacrifice it right away. You can't stop that. You would have had to kill Gerard earlier, and he does actually have like a way to get himself back. So lose 18 just right off the bat, just cause.
I mean, it doesn't even have to be turn 9. This is a deck with green in it. You're gonna have mana dorks. I think this could be as early as turn 6 or something that you can have the mana for it.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about having mana. Selvala, Heart of the Wilds is in every Yargle Multani deck, and you can play this first, then resolve Yargle Multani with a spare mana, draw your card because it's the biggest thing, and then you just get to make 18 more mana. How do you beat that? The answer is, don't let them have their commander.
It is just, unfortunately, the answer. It's one of those commanders, and you're going to get stomped by it.
Yeah, you choose the destiny. When you say, I'm doing 0 of something or 18 of something, I'm sorry, but
Rather you have 0.
I lose to 18 of anything.
But if we want to go from Golgari to Dimir, how about Umbris Fear Manifest? 3 blue-black for a 1/1, but he gets +1/+1 for each card your opponents own in exile. When it or another Nightmare or Horror ETB is under your control, target opponent exiles cards from the top of their library until they exile a land card. That can tear up a bunch of your opponent's libraries, plus he can get pretty big, especially if they have exile-based removal, which I think a lot of people are running nowadays.
That's what I didn't suspect about this the first time, and I underestimated it. And then the first time you see it, you're like, like horror payoffs and a little bit of mill, and it's going to get bigger. What I didn't realize is just how easily it gets to 21, and then you're like, oh no, they're in the colors to give this evasion and throw like a Rogue's Passage down, and now make it unblockable for 4 mana, and now you're just dead. It is much more urgent than it looks. Like, oh, I gotta watch out. I don't want them to mill me too many times. Like, nope. As soon as this triggers like 3 times, it's 21/21.
Oh, there's so many ways to exile your opponent's cards too. Leyline of the Void would just be amazing, especially if you can play it for free if it's in your opening hand. You slap it down, you go, all right, you guys figure this out, because Umbris is going to be real big when he comes out on the field.
And I'll say it right now. If you start any game against me with Leyline of the Void in play,
you crumble.
Your win percentage goes up 50% against me. I'm going to have to kill that before I can even start playing.
Cletus is also a great one in here, because if opponents' creatures would die, they get exiled instead, and you make stuff. That's not bad.
Just sort of like a residual way to like get an effect out of it, disrupt your opponents with the exile because they want their graveyards, and just kind of say, oh, Umbris is now a 10/10. Umbris is now a 20/20, and after that, it doesn't really matter. And any black card that cares about power, anything from Yargle Multani, port that right over, because once this thing hits 21, it's the same type of deal. It's like when you sack it with Disciple of Bolas, you draw your whole deck.
I mean, I feel like there's so many easy includes in here. My favorite, Bajuka Bog, or one of your favorites, Ashiok Dream Render.
Ashiok, exiling their graveyards and even adding to it with that. And Ashiok is also on theme. Ashiok's very like horror-esque. They're very like creepy, crawly type, wispy person.
Sure. They are very cool, and they don't do a lot in the story, so putting them into a deck actually just feels good.
Write your own story.
They're doing something. Uchulan is also a great one. It's star 4, and it's equal to the number of crabs, oozes, and or horrors, which you can get a little bit thematic with. But at the beginning of your end step, exile up to 1 target creature card from an opponent's graveyard. If you do, you create a copy of it, a token copy.
They spawn more of each other, and then it triggers Umbris every turn. And it's just, it is a way to weaponize horrors if you want to go into that route. You could go the Typal Kindred route, or you could just go the I don't care, play Leyline of the Void, fill up your graveyards, and exile piles.
I think that this is like a very cool inclusion because this is just like the exile version of like a Scoot Swarm, for instance. It's just multiplying.
Did you say it's a very cool incursion? Crypt incursion?
Sure.
The segways are on fire today. This exiles all creatures from a player's graveyard, and you gain 3. So this is like I think of this like the mill players to Fairies protection, where if they attack you for 100, you could definitely survive if you play Crypt Incursion, and it fuels Umbrus like crazy. You can even use it as a combat trick, instant speed.
Just aim it at the Carrower player. I'm sure you will get a lot of value.
Don't do that. Don't do that. Forget about that. Just go to the next commander we have on our underrated list, Duskana, the Rage Mother. You forgot this existed. If you're right, if I was right about that, go to the comments. Like, we're going to moxfield.com, the best place to build a deck. You can take all these commanders that you kind of forgot about, or you underestimate, or you didn't realize were this strong, and put them all into the same deck. Put them into a different decks. You can sort and tag and price them however you want. Moxfield's really customizable.
Moxfield is great. If any of these cards, like Ashiok, for instance, is just something that you forgot what it did, you can type it into the search bar, mouse over it, and it'll give you the full like text and picture of it, and it can also show you whatever printings it's ever been in. Do you like the Secret Lair Chibi one more?
I do.
You can just switch the printing and have it show up as your preferred printing.
Absolutely. But maybe we should get back to Duskana. 2 white, green, red for a 5/5. When she enters the battlefield, draw a card for each creature you control with base power and toughness 2/2. And whenever a creature you control with base power and toughness 2/2 attacks, it gets +3/+3 until end of turn. This is a very strong card on the battlefield because it's almost a permanent overrun for every creature you have. And even if they kill it, you replay it and draw a bunch of cards. So I'm kind of, when I've played against Duskana, I'm left going, what am I supposed to do with this? Am I supposed to kill it and give them infinite value? Or am I supposed to just take a bunch of damage to the face?
I like how this was supposed to be the commander for like morphing and that sort of like conceal. It's like, ooh, this will be fun, the detective deck. It's like,
I
no.
didn't even think of that.
I mean, that's where it came out, right?
Yeah,
like,
they
it came
wanted
out
you
in
to morph.
MKM.
Yeah.
But instead, this is like, there are just a lot of juicy creatures that you can play in Commander that have base power 2/2.
Can you name one card that makes 2/2 tokens right now?
How about Ultramarine's Honor Guard? That is a great one. This basically has Squad. It's an anthem that gives all of your other creatures +1/+1. But yeah, but the original creature is 4 mana, and then you squad it for 2, so you can make as many copies as you have the mana for.
And it doesn't matter that they're pumping the creatures because Duskana checks base power toughness, which will always be 2/2, which I thought was super cool. And by the way, the card I was thinking of was Field of the Dead. But you can also go Felidar Retreat because it buffs your dudes while maintaining their base power. You can't really change that. And then you can also make 2/2s as the game goes. And this is the way, like, you build up all these 2/2s, play Duskana on turn 5, and you could draw like 4 or 5 cards.
You never stop thinking about Field of the Dead.
I can't.
But
It's
it
in my
is
head.
pretty good in here. But if you want to go bears, how about 2/2 bears? Mother Bear is also a great one in here if you want to go that route. Because if she's in the graveyard, you could pay 3 green and exile her from the graveyard to create 2/2 green bear creature tokens. So they will actually just be 5/5s if you have your commander out, and that's a pretty good rate if you want bears.
Yeah, you could just go the literal bear route and play like random janky cards like this. I think that's still cool because it turns bears into actual
Power?
like powerhouses, even more so than Ayula, I think. We also have to shout out Mia's favorite card of all time. Not really, but one of her favorites recently, Unexplained Absence. This is a fun way that I've noticed to weaponize the targeting yourself. You can target yourself, get rid of a token or a clue, whatever, get a 2/2, and that's going to be a 5/5 attacker or draw you cards when Duskana enters.
That's pretty spicy. I do like that. There's also Annie Joins Up as a new card.
I love this one in the deck.
Deals 5 to target creature or planeswalker when it ETBs, and if a triggered ability of a legendary creature you control triggers an additional time. So they will be 6/6s, or adding +6/+6.
And you'll draw twice as many cards when Duskana enters. Like, what?
That's spicy.
That is beyond silly, and it kind of makes me want to look at Duskana and go, I'm tempted.
Maybe Naya's not that bad.
Maybe Naya's cool after all. All right, what is our next commander?
Our next commander is Zethi, Arcane Blade Master. 1 white, blue for a 3/3. This is just Chun-Li reskinned. Multi-kicker with white or blue. When it ETBs, exile up to X target instant cards from your graveyard. X is the number of times it was kicked. You put a kick counter on them. When it attacks, copy each exiled card you own with a kick counter on it, and you can cast the copies. So there are a lot of cool ways to play this, but we actually ran into someone and they played it in a poison way, which was one of the coolest ways we would have ever thought to play it.
That's awesome, and I never thought it. And I went to go because I was like, oh, that person built the poison version. I bet that's really popular. There's only like 12 decks on EDH Trick out of however many thousand. So I was like, wait, this hasn't really been done before too much. So I wanted to showcase it. That is what terrifies me about this, is you get to kick all of the like poison proliferate cards, put them on retainer, and then every time Chun-Li or Zethi goes off, you just keep casting them, and it's like a one-woman killing machine. Prologue to Phyresis is probably the best one. It just gives them a poison and draws you a card.
Aspirant's Ascent is also great because it gives creatures +1/+3, flying, and toxic 1. So this gives you a little bit of extra stats, and you can swing in with her a lot easier and don't have to worry about her dying.
Yeah, it makes her hard to block, and the toxic 1 is just another way to tick up those poison counters. It's so scary. Whoever played this, you're awesome. Shout outs to you.
That was super fun. Flux Channeler is also a great one in here because you're going to be proliferating once you cast those instants that you kicked. So you're just going to be dealing poison counters left and right, and they're going to be dead in no time.
Yeah, if you tone back the poison shenanigans and you just want to play Zethi in general, I think it's still a scary card when you start putting things like Snap on Retainer, because now you're going to bounce a creature every time this goes off, but it gives you the mana to cast the next instant spell.
Vega the Watcher is also a great one because you're going to be drawing cards when you cast stuff from exile, which is just all the cards that you kicked anyways.
We're going to move on to a janky-looking commander that is scarier than it looks for sure. Definitely belongs on this list. It's 9 Fingers Keen, 4 mana, 4/4 Menace, War to pay 9 life.
That's hexproof.
That's a lot of life. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you look at the top 9 cards for a gate, put it into play tapped, and put the rest on the bottom. This is like the gates commander, and there's just enough gates to get you over the line to have 10 gates for the main win condition of this deck, Maze's End. Maze's End says if you have 10 differently named gates, you win the game. And that is like, Maze's End used to be janky because there used to only be 10 gates for it. I think now there's a little bit more, even in Sultai. But the ways to get out all of these cards and to make them work were way slower. Now it's a serious threat that I don't think is like cute anymore. It's totally fine if you want to play the deck. I just think of it as scary, and like they're operating on a weird axis where they're never going to play a non-land permanent that is going to, end the game, or destroying that non-land permanent will ruin them. All their stuff is back here with the lands.
9 Fingers Keen is one of those cards that when it came out, I completely glazed over because it was like Baldur's Gate. But this is a very scary commander for gates. I'm really surprised that people aren't playing this more and they're still playing Go Shintai for their gate decks.
Yeah, we also have Archdruid's Charm. This is just one of the ways that they're going to get out whatever gate or Maze's End that they want to get. Not really much to say about it, but the deck's going to be packed full of these ways to make sure that Maze's End is not a dream. It's a reality that you have to figure out how to answer. They're going to be able to do it every game. It's not close.
It just gets a lot scarier. Spelunking is also a great one. You're going to draw a card and then you put a land card down and lands enter untapped. So that's going to actually give you all the mana that you need from those untapped gates.
It's a lot because every gate enters the battlefield tapped because gates are, kind of crappy at their face. But when they enter untapped, they're now dual lands, and it's like super scary. And I think coupling Spelunking with the next card is kind of a one-hit kill, and this is why I'm so worried about it, is Reshape the Earth. Go get 10 lands. Oh, that's convenient. If I have one gate in play, I'll go get the other 9 gates and Maze's End. They're probably enter untapped if I have Spelunking or Amulet of Vigor, and then once it happens, the game's over.
But how about Glacial Chasm if you want to go another nasty land?
Yeah, the backup.
Combat damage doesn't matter for the most part. If you can just keep getting it back, what does it matter? Because you can't hit me.
Yeah, while they're searching their deck for this stuff, if they're going to get beat down, they can put another must-answer threat in the land slot, and you're kind of like going to be hard-pressed to figure out what to do.
Of course, BZ wants me to read the ones with so much text in it, so how about another partner pairing, Okon and Zyndasplit? This is a lot of coin flipping. Okon is 4 in a red for a 3/3, and you partner with Zyndasplit. Beginning of combat on your turn, you flip a coin until you lose a flip, and you double his power and toughness when you win until end of turn. And then Zyndasplit says, at the beginning of your combat on your turn, you flip a coin until you lose a flip. When a player wins a flip, you draw a card. And probably you're going to be the only one flipping a coin at this table. So you're going to be having this giant commander, which is basically a one-hit kill anyways. And you're going to be able to draw your entire deck, especially if you can flip enough coins.
This is the scary part about Okon and Zyndasplit. It just doesn't seem like it should work this way. They're very janky, they're expensive, but when they start flipping coins, you're actually just going to die. Okon is a 3/3, and it doubles whenever you win. So if you win 1 coin flip, it's a 6/6. 2 coin flips, it's a 12/12, and 3 coin flips, it's lethal damage. You're literally dead. Flipping 3 coins or 4 coins to win 3 flips is not that hard. So I kind of always am playing against this deck, and I think heads I win, tails you lose helped get this message out there that you got to kill Okon because he's just gonna run you over. There's nothing you can do.
It's really dangerous. I definitely remember being at tables where they're like, yeah, I think he's like 28,000 right now. It's like, okay, you win.
Okay, Chandra's Ignition, okay.
One of the great cards in here is Krark's Thumb, 2 mana, and it says if you would flip a coin instead, flip 2 and ignore 1. It only cares if you win a coin flip, and you're going to be flipping double coins, so you have double the chance to just make this guy giant.
Yeah, this is the card they're going to be tutoring for and looking for because it makes it really trivial to win a bunch of coin flips. This is kind of like the Cabal coffers of the deck. You know, the mono black deck plays Demonitude, and you're like, well, I wonder what you're going to get. And this deck plays Fabricate, and you're like, I wonder what you're going to get. And then they reveal Karkstorm, and you're like, yeah, okay.
And there's also Chandra's Ignition, as BZ talked about earlier. You're going to pick a creature, and it's going to deal that much damage equal to its power to each other creature and opponent. So if Okan's like gigantic, if he's like 40 plus, which is pretty easy to do, especially if you have Kark's Thumb out, he's going to just deal a flat damage to all of your opponents and their creatures. They're going to be dead in no time.
I mentioned that 3 coin flips brings him up to 24 power. 1 extra coin flip is 48, and now you're dead to Chandra's Ignition, no combat required. This is just such a weird... I guess it's unintuitive. I wouldn't expect it to scale up this quickly, so I always underestimate him at first until I have to rethink and put myself in the place of younger BZ playing that game and going, oh yeah, no, this thing needs to go away. Zindersplit's good. Zindersplit's going to get a card advantage, but if Zindersplit was by herself, I wouldn't have her on this list.
Yeah, I do think it's interesting that Zindersplit says whenever a player draws a card, or whenever a player flips a coin too. Like on the off chance that it might be like somebody else having to flip a coin.
I do like some of the really janky cards that go in this deck, like Karpluzan Minotaur, just this ancient thing that says cumulative upkeep, flip a coin, and then you can, negotiate with other players where the damage goes. I love this card. It's so funny, but it is one of those cards that flips coins for free if it stays out for a couple turns. Sometimes you're on upkeep, cumulative upkeep, flip 3 coins. Well, now we're already halfway or all the way there to turning Okan into a game over.
Just hope that you don't lose too many coin flips when this is out, because they could deal the damage right back to your face with this, which is pretty funny.
They definitely can. There's also Yusri, Fortune's Flame, 1 blue-red for a 2/3 flyer. When he attacks, choose a number between 1 and 5, flip that many coins. For each flip you win, draw a card. Each flip you lose, he deals 2 to you. And if you win 5 flips, you can cast spells for free this turn. That's potentially possible with Kark's Thumb. I don't know the exact odds, but they're probably okay for 5 flips with 1 reflip on each flip. Anyway, you just choose like 5, you go all in, and whether or not you get the last bonus, you're just going to get like, the Zindersplit and Okan side, you won 3 coin flips. Draw 3 cards, and he's a 24/24.
I think that Okan and Zindersplit just made this this archetype of deck go from chaotic to chaotic good.
With a function, with a goal in mind.
Actually, you can win with it. There's also Spark Double. You want to make a copy of Okan, but it comes in with a +1/+1 counter also. So it's going to be even more powerful when you just keep doubling it, and it's going to swing in for more damage. It doesn't matter whether it's commander or not. As long as it keeps doubling, I mean, you're still dead to like 100.
Yeah, if you're attacking, you take 70,000, it doesn't matter that it's not commander damage. I like Zindersplit and Okan. Very, very cool commanders. I think they're pretty fairly costed, although maybe if I could go back in time, I'd make Okan like a 2/2. Maybe that's like slightly less, because then it would feel less like I'm getting surprised by it.
I don't know. I still feel like with doubling and just the like exponentials in general, he's going to get so big so fast, especially with Kark's Thumb.
All right, we got to go next to a commander that is near and dear to my heart, Beledros Witherbloom. 7 mana, 4/4 flyer. Every upkeep, you get a pest that dies into a life, and you can pay 10 life to untap all lands you control, activate only once each turn. Now, I wouldn't think this is a commander people would underestimate or people would, underrate and then die to, but I've played this deck a lot, and it's one of my favorite decks. It's kind of higher power. It's like a lands deck that spams Field of the Dead, because I got to have one deck that plays Field of the Dead, right? I can't just talk about it. I got to play it at least one or maybe all of my decks. But anyway, we were always surprised at how often Beledros just kind of survives and does his thing, which is very, very strong.
I want to have a talk with you guys because
I'll sit back.
I'm just saying, 10 life, untap all the lands you control once each turn. As long as you have card draw and you have life gain, that just basically means take an extra turn. Why don't you guys kill this?
Why don't you, viewer? Why don't you kill my Beledros?
Well, there's just a lot of times where I have met like a lot of people and they're like, it's not that bad. Why are you aiming removal at it? It's like, well, because he's going to take an extra turn now. He's going to take an extra turn on my turn. It's once each turn. It's not sorcery speed. It's not like, it's just, if he has the life, he can do it. And there's so many ways to gain life in here. Like with Life Gift, basically when things ETB, you're going to gain 1 life, and that stacks up over time.
Yeah, people are going to play lands every turn. So I'm going to play fetch lands and stuff, and I'm going to gain double life off of it, and it just kind of ticks up one at a time. So I'll try to, with this one, I play it subtle, right? I don't go trigger, gain a life, and act like it's the best thing in the world. I just go boop, and I press the up one, hoping that people don't realize that I've done this 20 times.
I mean, you also, that's just cheating, right? You have to
Cheating?
Announce your triggers.
I say like, game 1, boop, but I don't make a big deal out of it. You don't want to draw too much attention. There's also Journey to Eternity, which is one of my favorite, not combos, but it's such a good card with Beledros. It flips into a land that reanimates creatures. So now if Beledros dies, you can just use Journey to reanimate him. And then if you pay 10 life, it untaps the land that can reanimate stuff. So I've looped like Kakushos with this, and potentially you could go infinite if you have a lot of life gain in play, because you could sack Beledros and then use Journey to bring him back and continuously untap your lands to bring him back and profit if you have ways to gain 1,000,000. That's not something I've really ever done, but with Verdant Sun's Avatar, maybe you make it happen. It gains life equal to every creature's toughness when you enter.
That stacks up very fast. And again, BZ's decks fold to 1 Bojuka Bog or 1 Exile effect.
Whoa.
Make sure to point all of your Bojuka Bogs at him. There's also Cryptghast.
That doesn't even help with any of these cards. Oh, I guess it helps with Journey.
It really does. Cryptghast is also just like an amazing card because it has Extort on it to help you gain a little bit of life, and then you get extra mana from swamps, and you're going to want that mana because you're going to be playing a bunch of stuff. You're going to be drawing more cards, and it's going to keep on tapping to get more mana.
Yeah, this is also a stand-in for mana doublers because it also bolsters your life. So it's kind of the perfect one, but if you tutor out Urborg, now all your lands are swamps, so if you play like Cryptghast and then next turn you untap, you can make, 10 mana with your 5 swamplands. Then you tap for 10, play Beledros, 3 mana floating, untap your lands. Now you have 13 mana on turn 5, and all you did was play Cryptghast into your commander.
That's insane. And just like, honestly, Extort always surprises me with how much just residual life gain and loss there is. It's like a very powerful effect.
I mean, even in that scenario with 13 life, it's not that unreasonable to think that you could extort 2 spells with 13 mana, and then it's like, okay, I gained 6 of the 10 that I spent, and now I just have a bunch of advantage on board. Do you kill Beledros? Do you kill Cryptghast? Or do you kill the thing that I spent 8 mana on and played just now? Like, the thing is also Villas, because that was a perfect segue. Villas says whenever you lose life, draw that many cards, and now with paying 10 life, untap 10 lands, draw 10 cards, the game's over.
Just beware of the Orcish Bowmasters, because that will actually just kill you.
You love talking about this. I don't know if that's that relevant, but it is a fun fact that, like, you are dead to Villas, if your own Villas, if they have a Bowmaster.
I don't know. I feel like Orcish Bowmasters is such a prevalent thing in EDH right now that it's like pretty, it's the card of Lord of the Rings besides the One Ring, of course.
Yeah, and you can't even activate Villas in response because that just starts another chain of you drawing cards and getting pinged by Bowmasters. So it's pretty funny. But Villas in Beledros, it just kind of feels not fair. I think if you resolve Beledros and immediately can pay 10 life, your opponents are probably just dead. And that just means they should have respected Beledros in the first place.
Kill them.
Yeah, if you're looking for other ridiculous, let's say explosive commanders, we've got this list of the most explosive commanders ever.